You grew up believing a house was the ultimate sign of success. In the 1950s, the average home cost only twice the annual salary. Today, that same home costs 10 times more, and the dream has slipped through millions of hands. This didn't happen by accident. Someone changed the rules. Someone turned homes from dreams into financial weapons. The only question is, who's winning while everyone else is losing? Everyone remembers the stories. Your grandparents bought their first home before turning 30. 2 modest salaries, a handshake with the bank, a small house, a yard, a place to call their own. Back then, owning a home wasn't a dream, it was a given. In the years after World War II, governments poured resources into rebuilding nations and fueling growth. Construction companies worked day and night. Streets stretched into empty fields. Suburbs rose from nothing, and houses appeared faster than families could move in. Mortgages were simple. You signed a few papers and the keys were yours. Interest rates? Manageable. Even with one income, families thrived. Home ownership wasn't a luxury. It was the foundation of the middle class. Picture those neighborhoods. Fresh paint on every wall. The smell of new wood. Children racing bikes through quiet streets. Barbecues every weekend. A home wasn't just a roof. It was stability. It was dignity. It was wealth that could be passed down. People believed they were building something that would outlast them, and for decades, they were right. Property became the single most powerful wealth generator in modern history. Families climbed the social ladder one mortgage at a time. But here's the twist. That golden era wasn't just luck. It was a perfect storm. Cheap land, rising wages, and strict lending. Banks were forced to be cautious. Governments were invested in growth, and demand matched supply. The system worked until it didn't, because forever doesn't exist. The seeds of change were planted quietly. At first, no one noticed. Zoning laws tightened in big cities. Land grew scarce. Wages slowed. Interest rates spiked, then crashed, then spiked again. But something even more dangerous was happening in the shadows. The market had learned a new truth. Housing wasn't just shelter. It was an asset, and assets could be exploited. When profit enters the picture, predators follow. Slowly, policies began to favor investors over families. Financial institutions started packaging mortgages into products, betting on them like casino chips. Homes were no longer homes. They were numbers on a spreadsheet, vehicles for profit. Prices crept up, then surged, and the gap between wages and home values grew wider with every passing year. Most people didn't see it. They believed the dream was still alive, just harder to reach. They worked longer, saved harder, took on riskier loans. Some made it, many didn't. And while ordinary families fought for a single house, something else was happening behind the scenes. Someone was watching. Someone with deeper pockets, sharper tools, and a plan. Who were they? They weren't neighbors. They weren't small landlords. They were institutions, powerful, silent, and relentless. Pension funds, private equity, hedge funds, entities so large they could buy entire blocks in a single transaction. While families lined up for open houses, these players bought properties by the thousands, often before the for sale sign even hit the yard. The house was still sold as a dream, but the dream no longer belonged to you. It belonged to the market. And the walls were closing in, slowly, quietly. While you were told to keep saving, the system was rewriting the rules. A new game emerged, one where you weren't the player, you were the product. This is only the beginning, because in the next chapter, we step behind the curtain and meet the buyers you never see, the ones shaping the market from the shadows, the ones who decide how high the price climbs while you're still climbing the ladder. Before we go there, hit that like button. It's a small click for you, but it helps expose the truths they work so hard to hide. The question is, how deep does this go? You thought high prices were just the result of supply and demand. Not quite. What's happening in housing goes beyond economics. It's a silent architecture of control, built brick by brick over decades. And it's almost invisible until you know where to look. The shift began quietly. In the 1990s, something changed. Homes stopped being homes. They became numbers in a portfolio, a currency for the powerful. Real estate turned into a global asset class. Banks discovered they could slice mortgages into complex securities, bundle them, and sell them to investors worldwide. Risk no longer belonged to the banks, it belonged to the market. And when risk is sold, greed takes over. Wall Street couldn't get enough. More mortgages meant more profit. More loans meant more fees. Families were pushed to borrow larger sums, stretch their finances, and chase properties that were already inflating in price. They were told this was the only path to security. But in truth, they were feeding a machine designed to consume them. Then came the 2008 crash. It should have ended the game. Instead, it changed the players. Millions of families lost everything. Neighborhoods were abandoned, values plummeted, and despair spread like wildfire. For ordinary people, it was devastation. For institutional investors, it was a golden harvest. They swept in, buying foreclosed homes for pennies, often in bulk, using cash, while families begged for new loans. Entire streets shifted hands overnight, quietly moving from citizens to corporations. After that, the rules of housing were rewritten. Hedge funds, private equity, and pension funds, armed with billions, realized they didn't need to just invest in homes. They could own entire markets. Why buy one house when you can buy 100? Why buy 100 when you can control a city's rental supply? While you were told to keep saving, they were buying faster than you could blink. They didn't need mortgages, they didn't need open houses. They made deals behind closed doors, outbidding families before they even stepped onto the property. And they didn't stop at single-family homes. They targeted apartments, rentals, even mobile home parks. Suddenly, corporations were the landlords. They dictated rents, they tightened supply. They made scarcity their business model. Every empty lot, every delayed construction, every price spike, someone profited. The less you could afford, the more they earned. This is the invisible wall. You don't see it, but you crash into it every time you check a listing, every time your rent increases, every time you realize the dream is slipping further away. It's not built from concrete, it's built from capital. And capital has no face, no heart, no limits. Funds like Blackstone, Invitation Homes, and countless others now hold stakes so vast they can move entire markets with a single decision. They influence not just prices, but policies. They lobby for favorable laws. They shape tax codes. They control the narrative. And while they profit, families fall further behind, trapped in a game they didn't know they were playing. How do you compete with an opponent that can outbid you with billions? How do you fight when the referee, the system itself, favors the giant? You can't, not as an individual. And while you fight for scraps, they are already planning their next move. They're embedding themselves deeper into the market, creating models where ownership becomes a relic of the past, a world where you will live, but you will not own. You will pay forever. But here's the part no one talks about. These institutional buyers are just one layer of the machine. Behind them, there are forces even more hidden. Investors and networks so embedded in the system you'll never hear their names. Yet they collect profits from every transaction, every loan, every rent check you pay. They profit from the dream's destruction because they designed it to fail. In the next chapter, we peel back that final layer. We reveal who truly profits when the dream breaks. And trust me, it's not who you think. Before we move forward, subscribe to the channel. Every subscription helps this investigation reach more people. They'd rather this truth stays buried. Let's make sure it doesn't. The walls are closing in. The question is, who built them and what are they building next? You've heard the names of the big funds: Blackstone, Invitation Homes, private equity giants with billions in cash. But they're just the front row. Behind them, in the shadows, sits a web of players far more complex and far more powerful. These are the buyers you never see. Some of them never appear in the news. Sovereign wealth funds from oil-rich nations quietly invest in housing markets abroad, turning entire districts into long-term income streams. Their goal isn't to build communities, it's to extract steady returns, no matter the human cost. They don't care if prices double or triple, as long as the flow of money doesn't stop. Then there are the pension funds, ironically fueled by the retirement savings of ordinary workers. While you save for the home you'll never own, your own contributions might be financing the corporations that price you out. They buy homes by the thousands, package the rents as predictable income, and call it a win for investors. But for the families on the other side of that transaction, it's a trap that tightens every year. Add to this the silent partnerships between global banks and private investors. Complex networks of shell companies acquire properties anonymously, often in cash, bypassing competition entirely. In many cities, luxury apartments sit empty, owned by offshore entities that treat real estate as a vault for wealth rather than a place to live. To them, your city is not a home, it's a spreadsheet. This isn't just about buying houses, it's about controlling the supply chain of shelter. They don't just own the walls you live in, they own the land beneath it, the loans tied to it, and the policies that regulate it. They influence zoning laws that restrict construction, ensuring scarcity. They lobby governments to keep regulations favorable, shaping rules in ways you'll never vote on. And every restriction, every delay, every inflated cost feeds their profits. While you see a housing shortage, they see opportunity. Scarcity drives prices. Prices drive returns. Returns attract more capital. And the cycle tightens, squeezing you out while enriching those who were never even in the room with you. What's worse, they've learned to operate invisibly. Most ownership is hidden behind corporate names, trusts, and offshore accounts. When you try to find out who owns a property, you hit a wall of paperwork and secrecy. The true owners stay protected, untouchable, while they shape your market from a distance. And they're not just playing with houses anymore. They're expanding into every corner of real estate. Apartment complexes, mobile home parks, senior housing, even farmland. To them, every piece of earth is a potential asset, a resource to extract, never a place to belong. So who wins in this system? Not the families, not the communities. The winners are those who hold the strings, those who turn your need for shelter into their weapon for wealth. But even this layer isn't the end of the story, because behind these powerful buyers, there's an even more elusive force: the architects who don't just play the game, they write the rules. In the next chapter, we expose who profits most when the dream breaks and how they've ensured you'll never see them coming. At first glance, it looks simple. Corporations buy homes, rents rise, families lose. But the truth goes far deeper. The ultimate winners of this game aren't just the investors you see in headlines. They are the architects, hidden players who engineered the system to ensure that no matter what happens, they win. Follow the money, and the trail leads to the core of global finance. Mortgage-backed securities, rental income funds, derivatives tied to property values. Each layer is a tool to extract value, not from the property itself, but from the people who depend on it. It's a structure so complex that it feels accidental, but it's not. Every crash, every spike, every crisis is part of a cycle that enriches those at the top because they own the rules of the game. Think back to the 2008 crash. Millions lost homes, entire communities were gutted, and families spent years recovering. Yet for the architects, the collapse wasn't a disaster, it was a reset button. They scooped up foreclosed properties at a fraction of their value, repackaged the debt, and turned devastation into profit. The cycle didn't break, it evolved. Today, this choreography continues. Global investment banks create financial products that depend on housing markets being volatile. Rating agencies label risk in ways that benefit the biggest players. Policy influencers shape the laws to keep the machine well-oiled. The same system that tells you to save harder is the one stacking the deck against you. Governments, far from being neutral, are often entangled. Regulations are written with input from the very corporations they are supposed to oversee. Tax codes create loopholes that only large investors can use. Zoning laws, instead of increasing supply, often choke it, protecting existing assets and ensuring scarcity. Even subsidies, marketed as help for families, frequently flow back to the hands of developers and landlords. Breaking the dream isn't a side effect, it's the business model. The wealth extracted doesn't just stay in real estate, it flows upward, funneled into hedge funds, sovereign wealth funds, and global investment vehicles that compound their advantage. Your rent check might be paying dividends to a fund in another country, financing the purchase of properties you'll never have the chance to own. The cycle feeds itself, growing stronger with every transaction. Meanwhile, ordinary people are blamed. You're told you didn't work hard enough, didn't save enough, didn't plan correctly, as if the problem were personal. But the problem isn't you, it's structural. The dream wasn't lost, it was redesigned, reshaped into a system where ownership is rare and permanent renting is the norm. The scariest part is how invisible it all is. You don't see the boardroom meetings where decisions are made. You don't know the names of the shell companies buying your neighborhood. You don't hear the conversations where policies are crafted to favor capital over citizens. You only see the result. Homes priced out of reach, rents consuming your income, and the creeping realization that the ladder you were told to climb has no top. Behind every empty luxury apartment, there's an offshore trust shielding wealth. Behind every rising rent, there's a private equity firm calculating its next move. Behind every new regulation that claims to stabilize the market, there's a lobby shaping it to their advantage. This is not coincidence, it is a design. The broken dream is no accident, it's a strategy. As long as it generates returns, there is no reason for those in power to stop. Every year, more wealth is extracted, more control is consolidated, and the gap widens. So where does that leave you? You're not powerless, but you're not on equal ground. The system thrives on darkness. It survives because it stays hidden. But every truth revealed makes it harder for them to operate in silence. This matters because the story of housing is not just about homes, it's about power. Who holds it, who loses it, and who dares to challenge it. The dream wasn't stolen overnight. It was dismantled piece by piece while most people were too busy trying to survive to notice. Now you've seen the pieces, you've followed the trail, you understand the machine. And the question they fear most is the one you're asking right now. Now that you know the truth, what will you do with it? The story of housing was sold as a fair game. Work hard, save, buy a home, build a future. But now you see the truth. The game was rewritten, and the rules were never made for you to win. The house was once a symbol of freedom. Today, it's a tool of control, a mechanism to extract wealth, to keep generations working harder for less, to keep the dream always just out of reach. Behind every price spike, every bidding war, every housing shortage, there is a system designed to profit from your struggle. And the ones pulling the strings? They're hidden in plain sight, operating from boardrooms, trading floors, and corridors of power you'll never walk through. But here's what they can't control: awareness. The more you see, the less power they hold. The more you understand, the harder it is for them to stay invisible. They thrive in the dark, but the truth is light. This is not just a story about houses. It's a story about who writes the rules of your life. And now you know. If this opened your eyes, hit the like button. It tells the algorithm to spread what they'd rather keep hidden. And subscribe to the channel, because this is just one piece of the puzzle. The deeper we go, the more secrets we uncover, and the more power we take back. The dream was broken. The question now is, will you let them keep it?